afternoon, good evening. It's not even afternoon. This Sunday has gone by fairly quickly, but good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the NOSA group. Good evening. Welcome back to the NOSA group. I'm glad you guys decided to come hang out with me tonight. As promised, I am back, and tonight we're going to be talking about back offices. AKA EOR, or Employer Record, AKA PEO, Professional Employer Organization. So I'm going to drop all that stuff in the chat so that people know what I'm referring to when I'm talking about it. But mostly in our Facebook group, we have referred to it as a back office, but those names are a little bit interchangeable. And feel free to jump in and let us know where you're from. We're excited to have you guys here. And I'm excited to talk about this topic because I had a member recently tag me in a post about it because the topic comes up often and I have my own take on it. It's not something that I've had any direct experience with, but I am familiar with it as having been a second career nurse and work in human resources. I was familiar with PEOs, Professional Employer Organizations, which is also under that umbrella. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to jump online. It's 7 o'clock as promised, so that we can get started here and give you guys a second. I wonder if I got the time. To jump online with me. So definitely, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop your questions, as this is supposed to be really interactive, as I always like the Facebook Lives to be. And it's also, it's not that formal. So this isn't like an official presentation, but it's an opportunity to have a little bit of a conversation as promised with you guys. So let us know where you're from. Drop your agency information. These are always great times to drop your agency page. If you haven't already, guys, do it. Get your follows and likes up to speed so that more people can find out about your agency. So while we wait for a couple of people to get online, feel free to ask any questions you might have about it. I'll start talking in about 2 minutes and give a little bit of background on it, and then go into like some common questions, some things to be mindful of. And then if you jump online with me tonight, feel free to share your experiences, guys. Like I said, I'm all about being transparent, so it's not something that I've done personally. I know that a lot of nurses have done it for different reasons. It's not something that I would tell someone yes or no to do, as much as just get all the information and really think about how it may impact you long term. And it could be a great impact, it could be a challenging impact. So getting all of that together is really key and important. So all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. It's been about 2 minutes. I hope everybody is doing well on this Sunday. We are finalizing, as you always have to do when you're planning events, the last few pieces for NOSACON. I'm excited. We are officially almost 10 days away. We're about 12 days away from NOSACON, and I'm excited for you guys. I'm excited not only to meet everybody, but I'm excited to kind of see us all come together and support each other as a social community, but also get some information, education, get the opportunity to network. As we're making some changes to some things, we're having over 50 agency owners and team members attend this conference. So that is simply amazing. So let's get started. So back offices. And I'm giving a little bit of my take in the mix of it all, but essentially back offices provide services. And one of the main services that a lot of people use back offices for is your insurance, workers' comp, professional and general liability insurance. So many times as a new NOSA or newer NOSA, or in a climate like COVID, it can be very challenging and or very expensive to obtain those insurances. So Traditionally, I've seen your general and professional liability not be as expensive as your workers' comp. So because of that, the one of the services that back offices typically offer, NOSAs or other people, other businesses, is they provide your insurances. So they'll handle your insurances. And then a couple of other things that they do includes, typically they do payroll processing services, human resources services. Some go as much as to also do like the credentialing for you, and also the process of actually paying your employees, which is what we've seen in our industry as doing like payroll funding. So some things to think about when you think about, hey, is this a good fit? Or if you're having struggles of kind of determining, hey, do I kind of stick with trying to figure out getting the insurance, workers' comp on my own, or should I potentially go to another company like a PEO or employee of record and do that? One, you want to think through as far as, hey, is this relationship, is this business relationship something that I want to maintain long term? And the reason that's important is because you want to think about getting into a contract with a company that provides those services means that you're not responsible for those things, but then it also means that if at some point you did want to become responsible, you would have to go through the process of working to either obtain a company to do those services or hire an individual to do those things. So those are some of the main things that I tell people to really, really take into consideration is, if at some point you want to bring those services in-house, then you really want to think about the financial part of it structurally. Like if, for instance, I was to bring in a human resources person in-house in that situation, are they working with me in a commercial space? Are they working from home? Are they working virtually? So those are things to consider. And then of course, salary. So one of the other big factors in working with PEOs is that it can allow you to not be in situations where you have to pay an accountant, a payroll or bookkeeping type of person, an administrative person for those types of services. Some of the pros, and like I said to everybody, I haven't done it, so you can definitely chime in. This is just things that I've heard from other people, as far as, you know, their experiences and what I've read, kind of the pros of having that particular type of service, is around, it kind of takes away those things and responsibilities, especially for NOSA owners who are solo owners. So if I'm a solopreneur or a NOSA that's working solo, I'm not like juggling 10 different things in the process of recruiting and onboarding applicants. So those are definitely one of the major cons, is that either I don't have the resources or means to hire someone internally to do it, or I intend to kind of run the business solo initially. So that responsibility is no longer placed up on my plate as much as it's taken by a third party to manage, and then they kind of update me or, you know, communicate with me about the process. Some other things is it does, and I think a lot of the companies that do that and provide that service touch on this, it provides an opportunity for you to focus on recruiting. Recruiting is a huge challenge, even in an industry like healthcare where it's heavily referral based. It's a huge challenge to get that right candidate and have them actually start, which is our ultimate goal. So we can talk to candidates. I've talked to candidates for like a whole day and maybe got one person who was a right fit. So it is a huge time saver with regards to stuff like that, so that you're not doing recruiting, scheduling, payroll, human resources, onboarding, reaching out to clients, which can be very overwhelming. The other thing is that it eases some of the responsibility with regards to building up the capital for your business. Now, I will say, in the instances where people felt like capital was the reason that they decided to go with a back office or PEO company, in some instances, you might be a better fit for a funding company, which, like I said earlier, is already included in most of the PEO packages. And then they offer a lot of a la carte services. Some do your filing for your state taxes. Some might also do the process for issuing out your W-2s to your employees. They may also offer like some sort of benefits, health benefits or something like that. So those are all great things because then you're not responsible for going out there and looking for those things for your employees. But a lot of it just depends on your situation. Hey, Janetta. Okay, so I haven't talked about that. And if you're in the group, Janetta, it's a lot. It's a poll already in the group. I can't grab it, so I'm not able to screen grab it. So I can tag you in it, and then that way you'll see it. So there's already a poll in the group for the back offices that most people use, and then under the poll is comments around experiences and different things like that. Okay, it's okay. Trust me, we've all been there. Some other reasons people may consider using a PEO is that they're just not comfortable with that particular responsibility. So from what I understand, many of the PEOs offer like a basic service plan with these 2 or 3 elements in it, and then you can add on to it. So maybe I need a PEO to provide me insurance, which is what I've seen most people primarily do, and then offer credentialing or offer human resources compliance type of support. So from what I've heard, and you guys correct me, like I said, I haven't done it myself, so it's not firsthand knowledge. There is some companies that offer an a la carte system. So you can have like the basic service and then add in the things that you want to. Also, sometimes people just aren't ready to take the full responsibility of the business on. And that's where service providers, and like I said, they've been around. I know them as PEOs or back, and people refer to them a lot in the group as back offices. They've been around for years and they service different types of companies. So that's not really something that's new from an industry perspective. So they service different companies. They service, I've seen them used a lot in franchises. They may be used, I think they're more so used in the medium and small business realm, but different types of businesses. They've been using cleaning businesses, so it's not something that's specific to healthcare. I think that with healthcare, there's so many variables that it's important that you're clear about what you want your business to be in the future. So those are some of the pros, and those are some of the reasons people have done it. Let's talk a little bit about some of the cons, and then I'll kind of wrap up with things to look out for or things that might be red flags. And I'll let you guys ask questions. So feel free to ask questions anyway, and we'll get to those as we move along. So some of the cons. Some of the cons is around, for me, the financial piece. So having companies do this type of service takes a percentage of your bill rate. And I'm going to give an example, and I'll try to keep it really basic so we can do that basic math of it, is that if you're billing $20, maybe you're paying the nurse $5, and then kind of the profit or what rolls back into the business is $5. If you have a company like a PEO, a percentage of that, quite a large percentage of that, goes to them. So that kind of leaves you in a position of slowly building your business, but still having a lot of responsibility because you still are the primary source of contact. For applicants, you still have to do advertising and recruiting for job opportunities. You have to look for new business as well. The other thing that is a challenge would be that depending on what company you're working with and kind of how you structured your contract, many times you may only be operating as a recruiter. And in those types of situations, it's always tricky to, hey, Tiara. Okay, let's see, okay. Taria. Hi, Taria. It's always tricky to make sure that you're getting what you intended to get. So that's why I say sometimes you're operating as an overpriced recruiter, because for certain companies, they do it all. And that's a part of the contract that they have. And your only role is to recruit. And with any business, you really want to know every piece of your business. So like if I say, hey, in the next 10 to 5 years, I'm going to, retire and I want such and such to run my business. In making that decision, I really need to know how to run the whole ins and outs of my business to make sure that the person indeed is doing what I want them to do. So not getting that experience and exposure can be challenging in building up your confidence. So I shared this story before with you guys. I used to do human resources for the federal government, so that was a big benefit for me starting my agency. I definitely feel and understand you guys being hesitant to get into some of those different pieces of your business, but you really need to, so that if something is going wrong, you'll catch it before it becomes a major issue. So that's the other thing. So it may hinder you from, one, you may end up just operating as a recruiter. Two, there is quite a large percentage, and you guys can tell me, I'm not sure, I believe it was like 30%, but it might be even more than that. Early on when people were talking to me about it, I've seen 18 to 30% being given to the back office. And then the last part is, does it make sense? Like, does it make sense to have a person? And part of me saying does it make sense is around the fact of, if you do the math of the money that you're charging or being charged by a back office, does it make sense to give it to them, or does it make more sense to bring a person or persons in-house to do those specific activities? An accountant, human resources assistant or specialist, a bookkeeper, and a lot of this depends on what they're doing versus what you're doing. A credentialing company. So when you think about some of that stuff, you really want to take that into account. Like, does it make sense? Is it costly? Have I really sat down and done the numbers to say, hey, if for every dollar I make, they're taking 75 cents, and 75 cents times 100,000 hours that I do a year is this number, and I could pay somebody that salary. So, and then of course the last part is that many times, and this is what I think Stella was alluding to when she posted it in the group, getting into a contractual relationship with a back office company is fairly simple, but getting out of that dynamic is a little bit more complicated. And I think I talked in the last video yesterday before I did this about the fact that you have to read your contracts. So kind of to recap for those who are jumping in, I was just sharing about the fact that some of the pros around it is that you don't have to deal with that initial cost of getting started if your hurdle is around getting your workers' comp and your business insurance. You don't have to take on all the responsibility early on, as far as if they're providing like human resources and payroll or payroll funding types of services and compliance services for your business. That kind of takes it off of your plate, and then you can more so focus on, building the business and getting applicants, getting people onboarded. Some other things is they may offer some additional a la carte services like your healthcare benefits or 401k or processing for those types of things, which is a benefit to any company to offer those types of services, especially small businesses. And then of course, it allows you to really focus on recruiting and building up your staff, your staffing pool, your resource of applicants who are interested in your organization. So it allows you to kind of be more sole or hyper focused in that area. And then of course, some of the cons are that it can be costly. So if you're having someone else do these services, whether it's a company that does them or an individual, they're taking a piece of your business. It's not in-house, so they're taking a piece. I've seen that they take a little bit more, and you guys can fill in the blanks as to what that percentage is. And two, not taking out the time to really see if it is financially, meaning do the numbers, guys. So like when I gave the example of if for every dollar that the business gets back, this particular company takes 75 cents, and on average every year I'm billing 100,000 hours, do the math. And that comes out to be, I'm not sure, you guys gotta help me with that. Whatever that number is, could I hire a person part-time? Could I hire a person temporarily to do those types of services? So you really want to think about, is that something that makes sense in-house? And then the other thing is some of the contracts make it very challenging for people to get out of them. So getting into the contract, in my opinion, is fairly easy. Some places, most of them have application process and they may ask for a little bit more. But that process, from what I've heard, is pretty seamless. But the process of kind of ending that business relationship and moving on to have those roles operate internally in your business is where people have come into hiccups. And a lot of that stuff is outlined in your contracts. So that's why I said in the last video, make sure you read your contracts. If you're not clear, either get it removed or get clarification. With the back office employer record, and this is typical, this isn't everybody's case, but this is what I've typically seen, those employees are not your agency's employees. So unless you have it set up differently, you would, as an agency owner, have to, at the point that you decide to end the relationship and bring everything in-house, operate the process of an NOSA starting over. You would have to go out and obtain your workers' comp. So you don't get like credit for having workers' comp and those types of dynamics for a period of time, or general and professional liability. You may or may not be able to get access to the employees who are working for your agency, and their files and their records, so that you can transfer them over. So that is probably the biggest hurdle, and that's why I was mentioning earlier about knowing what's covered, what's not covered, and how it impacts you at the point that you decide to do things in-house. Now, one other thing to think about is some NOSAs may not want to ever do it in-house. So in those instances, it's a good idea. It makes sense. If you're somebody who says, hey, I just want to run it solo, I want to get the support of this particular organization. Hey, Laquana, I'm glad you jumped on. And that's it. Go for it. I would say do it for sure. And like I said, other industries do it as well. But if you say, hey, in the next 3 to 5 years, I want to run my office either virtually, which I would encourage you guys to do, because that's going to save a lot of money. I want to have my human resources person in New York and a payroll person in Philly, and that's going to be my core team. And I encourage it mostly because that's what other companies are doing. And it isn't easy, but it's very doable in this climate of telework and work from home. It's doable. Everybody did it for a year or two in their respective businesses and organizations, so it can be done. The other part is around, if you are in a situation where you are working with a back office and you maybe didn't get clarity with regards to your contract, how do you peel the onion, I'm going to say, that you're now presented with? So they're not your employees most of the time. They are the employees of that particular company. Some companies are open to helping you make the transition and work with you through that process. Many are not. Typically, they're not, because contractually, they don't have to. How comfortable are you with, kind of having or being in a place where you have a lot of staff working, but you want to transition them over to you 100%? and kind of how do you piece that all together? Like, how do you get those steps together? So, um, Laquana, definitely chime in. Shaquita, hey. Um, with any thoughts or any pointers you have, or how you've been able to kind of maneuver through it, or things you would have done differently. As I mentioned earlier, it's not my experience. I've talked to a couple of different people, and it's kind of a compilation of their experiences, and then, of course, what I know about that particular type of service. And the other thing I would say is, if you're in a place where you have to, or you've decided to also discontinue the services, maybe because you're not happy, right? So that happens. It happens in every industry where you have services that you're not happy. So if all of your services are being done by one company, if you're not happy, how do you unravel that situation? If maybe they're not processing things right, or there are delays, or any plethora of things could be happening, having everything being done by one company will create the largest challenge of your life to manage it and also manage the employees. So those are all things that I think you should think about. Some things that are red flags. So Laquana, I'm sure you can help me with this. So some things that I would consider red flags, and this doesn't necessarily just apply to back offices as much as it applies to any product or service, but I think I've seen it a lot in the back office arena. Contracts that aren't clear. So that's a red flag. Like, if you can't talk to your account sales rep, and I say sales rep again because they're in the business of making sales through providing these services. So if you can't get clarification on language, or get specific language removed, then that's a red flag. Every contract, even the contracts we do as NOSAs, facilities, edit, change, move, remove, add, correct, addendum, those types of things. If there's no wiggle room around that process, then that, for me as a business owner, would be a red flag. If there's not opportunities to ask questions around what's within the contract, that's a red flag. Also, if in the contract there isn't language around any sort of cancellation policy or process, or the steps, or if you ask the rep what's the steps, which I would encourage you to do, and you're not getting the answers you want, that's a red flag. Some other things. Hi, Shanaik. To think about would be, when you're working with the back offices, what services are you getting? What specific services are you getting? They should be able to provide to you an outline of the services that they will be providing in addition to the contract. So like, if the contract says, and I think I might have one, now that I think about it, but if I have one, I'll share it later. If it says human resources, payroll processing, what's another one? Insurance, coverage, what else? Your unemployment insurance, all those types of things. And for human resources or payroll processing, it's not like within the contract or an addendum that kind of outlines what is covered when it says human resources or payroll services. Then you need to go back. So you want to know, are they processing the payroll and paying the employee? Are they processing the payroll and expecting you to pay the employee? Are they not processing the payroll at all? Or are they just paying the, different taxes, state taxes and stuff like that? Same thing for human resources. When they say they offer human resources services, is it that they are doing your I-9s and your orientations and your compliance, like background investigation, drug screening types of stuff? You want to be clear about that if that's something that they're providing. The same thing applies to payroll funding. If they're funding your business and for your payroll, are they also processing it? So Those are some things that I would get clarification. And just to wrap it up, things that you want to clarify are the contract, the contract, the contract. If you can't clearly understand what the contract is talking about, get clarification. If you can't get it, that's a red flag. That's something to reconsider. Look at a couple of different companies. So, as I mentioned earlier, Janetta was asking, there's a poll in the group. There's a couple of different companies. And to be honest, there's a handful of the same companies that specifically work with healthcare staffing businesses. They are listed in the group, and a lot of people have done an amazing job of responding and commenting on their experiences. Shop around, guys. Don't just go with the first company that you're referred to. Without having shopped around and gotten different quotes and different rates and percentages and understanding how you get into the contract, understanding the process of getting out of the contract. For people who have referred certain companies to you, take out the time to talk to them on the phone or via messenger or something where you can ask questions. You can get a better feel for, well, what are the steps to onboard a person? That would be a great question to ask. Because some companies have a system, some companies have different steps, and some you drop into a portal. So you want to make sure that it fits with what you're already doing in your business so that you're not like adding additional steps and not really benefiting from having their services. Look online. I'm notorious. I want to look online, look at their Google, their Yelp, look at other people that are outside our industry and see their experiences with those particular companies. Some things that are important to me besides like the contract and what's in the contract is the customer service. How easily can you get in touch with them? How quickly do they return calls or return emails? As well as support, especially if you have a back office that has some sort of portal that you have to drop applicants' information into. How easy is it to maneuver through that portal? How easy is it to get support if you're having difficulties or the applicant is having difficulties with the portal? Resolving payroll issues, that's a big one. If you're having payroll issues, you want to make sure that your particular back office is on top of it in the way that you would as a business owner. That they're asking and following up on different things, that they're not just waiting and then, time goes by and now you're kind of stuck in the middle between the applicant or employee and the back office to resolve a payroll issue. Payroll issues are huge in our industry, and it can really stifle your business if it's something that happens to a employee that's willing to share their bad experience. Hey, Sandra. The other thing is, what else do they do? So because back offices provides a product and a service, I kind of want to know, do they work in other industries? Do they work in construction or commercial cleaning or different things like that? Or do they specialize in this particular industry? So you want to kind of know how much experience they have in the industry, which touches a lot on their knowledge base. So that's the other thing. And I'm going to let you guys ask some questions, and feel free, Laquana, since I know you're on here, to chime in with any of your experiences. The other thing is, if there are issues around a process, a step, a system, is there something in place to allow it to be resolved? So if, say, for instance, you're having an issue with an account manager, is there some sort of chain of command that allows you to resolve that matter fairly swiftly? And guys, don't get me wrong, because you already know I asked a bunch of questions, but if I'm doing business, I'm going to ask you a ton of questions. And then the other thing is, are they requiring any sort of long-term contract commitments? Those things are sometimes a good fit for a business owner, because maybe they're saying, hey, I don't anticipate bringing those services in-house until 3 to 5 years. So that might be a good fit. But as a NOSA, especially NOSAs, really, whether you come out this year or you've been in business for some time, our industry is volatile, even though it is consistent. So you may get in, start working, start, in the process, or maybe jumped in during the pandemic, things were great, and now post-pandemic, things are kind of shaky, and you no longer want to be in the business. But if you're tied into a long-term contract, and to me, anything more than a year is a long-term contract, then that'll present challenges for you with regards to terminating the contract, fees related to termination. So that's definitely something that you want to take into account when you're in that space. So I think I put a poll up in the group, and maybe you don't see it, but let me know. How many of you guys are using a back office? So I know a couple of people on here already are using it. But how many of you guys are using a back office? What has been your experience? Janetta, I'm going to write your name down because I'm going to tag you in the poll that's in the group. For the companies that are out there, I know that industry is going through quite a few changes with just like inflation and all the different things happening in the market. What has been your experiences, or what some of the questions you heard, or some of the myths that you heard about them that I might be able to help you answer? Okay, I'm gonna go down. Okay, yeah, Shanique, I'll tag you too. So if you're new to the group, you can always get a lot of great information under features. So features has, I want to say, 5 or 6 polls around that getting started process. They have people's information for insurance, scheduling apps, back office, payroll funding companies. So that's a great resource to kind of do what I said, is to kind of talk to people about their experiences in the system. So check it out. So check it out there, but I'll tag you guys in it as well. I'm going to write your name down. Okay. Any questions? So this is you guys' chance to ask questions. I've been on here since 7, but I'll give a quick recap of what I talked about. And I just talked about the pros and cons. And one of the other NOSAs, I want to say last week, tagged me in a post that's out there because I see that question coming up time and time again. And some things that I would do if I decided to, or if I had to start an agency in this climate and decided to use a back office, some of the pros that I've seen out there, some of the cons, and some things that I would make sure that I do is what I discussed. And a quick recap of the pros is that it allows you to maybe get started faster because you don't have to take on the financial piece with regards to insurance and workers' comp. And more so workers' comp, but the business insurance piece. So it allows you a bit of a jump start there. You're also able to kind of get support from experts or experienced people in that piece of the business operations. In the group, there's an organizational chart, which is kind of one that we use, and one I've seen used in medium to small businesses as well, to structurally set up your business so that you kind of have all areas covered. And a couple of the things that were listed on there, besides like CEO, COO types of roles, was you need a compliance person. So you're always going to need someone who can handle your compliance, credentialing, unless you're doing it through a system. The other piece is, and even in that instance, you still need somebody to do it in the system. Then you always have like your administrative scheduler person, which can be the same person or separately, but you always want someone that's always kind of managing kind of the flow of the office, as well as in tune with what's happening in the office, in addition to a scheduler. And then the last 2 roles, besides like your operational manager to make sure that everything is getting done, will be your accounting type. So it could be an accountant, maybe not. And then of course your human resources type, who will be handling like employee relation issues, onboarding new hires, those types of things. Anything incidents that may happen on site with employees. So they're kind of that all around human resources person who could help you with employee relations, benefits, maybe payroll if you don't have a payroll person. So that person can also operate as a dual role. And then finally, like your operations manager, which is essentially the person that makes sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do within the organization. But that individual should also be fairly well-rounded in all of those specialties. So when I was in human resources, we called that person a generalist. And that meant that they kind of knew a bunch of different things about human resources, from the law to the benefits, compensation, and things of that nature. So that's really what I think of when I talk about a business operations manager. So those were some of the pros. Also, you can focus on recruiting and building up the business. You could more easily obtain and acquire more contracts and employees potentially, because those other pieces are being handled by the company. Some of the cons were that you're being charged a fee. So just like with any other business, product, or service, you pay a fee. I think the fee, and I looked really quickly while we were talking, can be upwards of 18 to 20% of your bill rate, but it varies. And it really depends on the company. I don't know that it's a set rate across the board, like when we talk about, hey, set your bill rates at this or what have you. The other thing is that your ability to transition and bring those roles in-house can be challenging. As the employer of record, they are employees of that particular company typically, and to kind of unravel that can be tedious, and it can take a lot of time, and in some instances they may not do it for you because they're not necessarily contractually obligated to do it. The other things were, some of the cons were, if you do the math, and LaQuana, tell me a little bit about that, if you're still on here, about the math of it all. If you do the math, you might just be able to hire someone internally yourself when you kind of do the math of it all. The other thing about that is when you think about, and I'm going to do a little bit more talking about the math. When you think about the math, you'll need the money to bring the person on board. So at some point, you're going to have to kind of pull back with the company because you kind of need to have like that bridge to bring a person on board to pay their salary. But I encourage people to think a little bit outside the box. That's why I was talking about the whole, hey, they don't have to work in-house with you in a commercial space. So I wouldn't spend money to have a human resources person work in-house with me to do anything. They can work from their home as long as they're competent, as long as they have good references, they have good background. It's always great if they've already worked in the industry. That's the more important thing. Is that to really think about doing things in a way of, you just because you hire people on your team doesn't mean that they have to work full time. And I think as we've seen our industry transition a lot, even as we just seen the world transition to working from home, we have to really think about what is the work that the person is doing, and does it require that they work 40 hours a week? Or can it be done in less time? I think some of the traditional things that we've seen our industry or our world do is changing, and in a good way, because that's a savings. There are a lot of companies out there where they have people who have those experiences and want to work more independently or with more flexibility, like Fiverr and TaskRabbit. And there's so many companies out there, those are the ones that come to mind, who have people who do that. You know, there's virtual assistant companies that have people who do those things. So before signing on the dotted line, I would encourage people to really do the math and do it on the higher end of things, and kind of exhaust all your options beforehand. And then the other thing that was one of the cons was around it being a situation of having you making you sign long-term contracts. So for me, when I say long-term contracts, I'm really referring to a contract longer than a year. I haven't heard anything from people saying that the process of getting in was challenging, but I have heard people say that the process of getting out of it has been challenging. And a lot of it's based on where you want to see yourself and your business in the future. It's not a bad thing. I don't have any issue with people who do it or that they're taking the wrong turn or anything like that, as much as I would say that they're not going into the situation with all the information. So that was primarily why I wanted to do the Facebook Live, is to do that for you guys, because if once you already signed the contract and you kind of already started working with them, and even in instances where maybe you're having issues or you're having problems and they're not getting addressed or resolved, you're kind of tied to those companies in some instances because of the contract or the termination fee or some other type of requirements that were listed in the contract that maybe you just missed. So, all right. Okay, so Terry is saying she's never used one. In the beginning, I thought they all would be the employer record. My reasoning was that I started a business to be the employer and didn't want to get stuck in a contract I could not get out of or have to pay a fee cutting to my funds. Exactly. Yeah. So those are usually the reasons, but I think some people become nurses and they're content with that. You know, they don't want that additional responsibility. And in those instances, those are probably the best fit types of situations where you can go to a company and say, hey, I want to have the agency, but I don't want all those other responsibilities. Can you help me out? They say, yep, this is the fee. And, they take their piece of the pie, and they're content. The other thing is, if you're considering it, any of the people that are here on the Facebook Live, just do your due diligence. It's not a bad thing, and negotiate everything. In my reality, and it's taken me probably the last 3 or 4 years to really settle in on the thought process, everything is negotiable. The rate is negotiable. What they offer is negotiable. So if you feel like, hey, this is a great company, I like their vibe, I've gotten great feedback from people who've worked with them, I've asked all the questions, they've answered the questions, I'm clear, I think it's a good fit, it's something I want to do, but this part of it doesn't work for me, I encourage you to negotiate that. Don't just accept what's given. Negotiate everything. I say that to you guys because that's exactly what I do. Everything. And everything. And if they want your business and it makes sense, they'll work with you. Like I said earlier, some of the popular ones offer a la carte services for a lot of different things. So they definitely want to create a package that fits you or fits what your business is doing. And then some are a little more strict and kind of have a template of services that they offer, and you can pick the template or not. So with that being said, do your homework, read your contracts. If you're not clear, get somebody else to read it. Make a lawyer, set up time with a lawyer or a legal professional to look over it. They'll do an amazing job of red flagging some things that are in there that you want to kind of just be mindful of, or go back to the account rep about. If they don't answer questions easily and they're not receptive to making changes in areas that you want to make changes, that's a red flag. And be able to look at a couple of different companies. So I would never go with the first company that I talked to. I would, though, talk to the first company, 2 or 3 others, and then if I felt like the first company was the best one, then that's fine. And one of the reasons I would do it that way is because talking to a couple of other companies may bring up questions that you didn't ask the first company. Along with, you want to also offer yourself comparisons. So you want to be able to compare, hey, well, it's this, and they do this, but they don't do that, or maybe they do this. So you want to look at things with the full picture. Like I mentioned, I'm going to wrap up here, guys. I don't think you guys had any more questions and comments. Thanks for the stars, guys. This is a new thing for me on Facebook. They're doing this stars thing, so I decided to participate. So thank you guys for all the stars. And if you have more questions, I'll probably do another session like this on Thursday. If you want me to talk about a particular topic, drop the topic below in the comments. Otherwise, I just look through the group and pick a topic that I can talk about, usually for about 50, 60 minutes, and allow you guys to chime in and kind of give your take and get some more information about. So, as always, thank you guys for being a part of our community. And welcome to all the new members. It looks like we have a couple of new members here tonight. Welcome. Welcome to the Nurse Owned Staffing Agency. And we're glad you're here. We're glad you decided to join. You're going to enjoy yourself here. We are a welcoming community, supportive, and we have a lot of great information, tools, and resources. I think of the group now, especially for those who are early on with the group, it's like a monopoly board where all the pieces fall out. So it is and can take some time to put it all together, but I guarantee you the information, especially through the process of getting started, is there. And I will also say the information is there, but it also looks different for everybody. So when talking to other NOSA members or asking questions, you want to really take that into account, because the way I got started looks different than the way other people have gotten started. And part of it also depends on what part of the US you live in. So really, be open-minded to that. Yeah, we kind of all go to step one, but the next steps after that can look very different for different people. Some people get started with business owners. Some people get started solo. Some people get started with a group. So that all takes into consideration kind of your outcomes from the process of getting your business going. So thanks as always. One other note for any NOSAs who are attending NOSACon in about a week. A little bit over 10 days. We have a survey out there. We've emailed it out. You've seen it if you're in our Telegram group, or I have posted it here on the NOSA group under features. Make sure you fill out our survey, and that'll give us a little bit more information about the breakout sessions that we're going to be doing all day on Saturday and what you're interested in, so that we can make sure that we have enough accommodations for those particular topics for that particular day. Again, thank you. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Sunday, and I will be chatting with you.